Today, the Black Liberation Church honors 3 extraordinary individuals who have not only inspired me, but they have changed the lives of many. Their dedication, their passion, and purpose have made a lasting impact upon me. Tonight, we celebrate their achievements and the legacy they have created. It is my pleasure to introduce our first honoree of the evening, Baba Professor James Small. Professor Small, he is a scholar, an activist, an organizational consultant. He is CEO of Sana Lodge Enterprise, CEO and president of African American Management Company in Ghana, and international VP of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, a former imam of Malcolm X's Muslim Mosque Incorporated. He taught Pan-Africanism as well as African religions at City College of New York in the CUNY system. Professor Small has been dedicated as a civil rights activist, serving as bodyguard to the late Ella L. Collins, who is the sister of our beloved Malcolm X, and holding roles in the organization SNCC and the NAACP. He lectures globally, contributes to documentaries, and he leads cultural tours. One of them is the burial of Malcolm X, with plans for online courses on African spirituality. His informative, eye-opening, and dynamic presentations have caused him to be recognized as one of the most distinguished activist scholars of our time. In the Black Liberation Church, we are honored to present the Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Rosalind Jeffries Legacy Award to Professor James Small, who our beloved call him Baba. Amen.
Okay, I want to make sure that you can hear me, so if you decide to run me out the door, I can hear you in time and take the right path. So, Reverend Derek, my fighting buddy preacher, we really fight all the time on the phone. But when he was putting this ministry together, he said, Brother Small, I need you to be with me. I need you to sign. I think we met on the street someplace when I'm signing the corporate papers, with our cars parked across the way, because he had a mission that he wanted to be on. And one of the greatest missions you can be on is to teach the essence of God to your people. No matter what religious form you use, they're all tools. It is the message that the tool is trying to carry that's significant, and then the carrier of the message. So initially we were trying to figure out what would I talk about tonight. And I had some ideas walking in here. I even have notes on my phone. I've been working all week, Derek. You be calling me to keep my heads up. And you know what? I had to drop all of that after seeing what's going on here tonight. And so I'm just honored to be here. I think the ceremony that you just did would have been enough for tonight. So I thought what I would do is to inform you of something in the African world that we need to understand. I think today some of us saw the idiots that run the presidency of the United States and the abuse they heaped on a man who was in the middle of a war trying to save his people. I've never seen nothing like it in my life. They've actually went to the bottom of the Cracker Barrel to get what is now called the leadership of the United States of America. And it's an insult and a shame. And they represent us, whether we like them or not. For 4 years, that's what's representing us. But he's not the topic tonight, because this is too beautiful for him to be the topic. Malcolm X is a man who inspired me from the time I was very young. And I met Malcolm when I was 16 years old. And I was in the Navy when he was assassinated. And at 18 years old, you don't truly understand things well. Even though I was in the civil rights movement since I was 14, sitting in and picketing the Woolworth and picketing white supermarkets, trying to get them out the black community. I still didn't understand what we were doing. We were just young people doing what we were led to do. And when Malcolm was killed, my brother sent me the clippings. I was stationed in the Mediterranean. And we had gone to France. We were in Cannes. You know what young people do in Cannes when you're in the military at 18, you're having a good time. But my brother said, who was in the organization, that Malcolm was going to be in France. So we went over to Paris, but he never showed, and we didn't know why. So we went back to Nice and then to Cannes. And we went out to sea. And a few weeks later, I got a mail call, and I had a big packet. And in that big packet was the clippings of Malcolm's assassination from all the newspapers and magazines. And he also sent me his clippings of John Kennedy's assassination. So I put them in a big photo album. And this is the beginning of my political education. And I'm showing them around. And one day I come to my locker, and it's gone. And a young man comes to me and said, Mr. Small, the CID came to your locker and took your portfolio. Now, the CID is Central Intelligence Division of the Navy. That was my first encounter with CIA, because they teach CIA, right? And so I protested, but they claimed they never took it. But the young man who told me, you wouldn't believe who he was. He was one of my best friends, just as white can be. He was the nephew of the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. But he didn't want to have nothing to do with the Ku Klux Klan. He wanted to hang out with the black kids. And he was a wonderful young man. I would see that document again after, I get home out of the Navy and I go back to South Carolina. I grew up on a little plantation in the woods, a little African village in Georgetown, just below Charleston. And I go home to my grandmother, who's the root woman of the whole village. And I tell Mama I gotta go to New York. And she said, why you gotta go to New York? Stay home, you finished with the Navy, had a little gas station, a nice little business. About to get married and everything. But I said, no, the Spirit said I gotta go to New York and find Malcolm X's organization and take it over, become the leader. I didn't know what I was saying. But within 3 years, I was the imam of the Muslim Mosque, Inc., and went to Mecca before most went to Mecca, and realized even that wasn't ours, and that's when I turned to traditional African religions. But here's why Malcolm is important for this conversation today. There's something going on in the world now, and a lot of our people are dying. America's not talking about it. It's in the Congo. Now, when Patrice Lumumba was killed, Malcolm announced it to us because nobody was talking about Patrice Lumumba and the Congo. But Malcolm told us that Patrice Lumumba was important, and he sounded the word. And when Kennedy was assassinated, he made a statement, the chickens coming home to roost did not make me sad. Actually, they make me glad. Most people didn't understand what he was saying. He had said that the CIA had killed Patrice Lumumba, and now your same CIA have come home and killed your president. That's why everybody got upset with him, but we didn't understand what he was saying. Some of us did. That's what he was saying in metaphor, but the government understood the metaphor, and they took his life. But here's why Malcolm making the call on Patrice Lumumba is important. Today in the Congo, there's a force. There's a force called M23. And we are being taught and made to believe that they are the devil, and I'm here to tell you they're not the devil. M23, the force that's fighting in eastern Congo, that's backed by Paul Kagame, who they're trying to make the boogeyman of Africa, is not slaughtering our women and children. They said that about Idi Amin, and it wasn't true. They've said that about anyone they want us to turn against because they want to destroy. So let me give you a bit of history thanks to Malcolm X. Paul Kagame Betty Dawson, Alambe Brath, Kwame Ture, and myself, and others were sitting together having lunch in Uganda when the two presidents was killed and the genocide in Rwanda was initiated. Now, I thought I was a revolutionary back in those days. So when Paul and them got the call, and when we were made to understand that a plane had just been shot down and the president of both Burundi and Rwanda had been killed, all of the AK-47s that was lined up around the wall started going click, 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 click. And of course, Brother Small grabbed one too. And I jump on this Jeep, and Abraham Mahosi jump on this Jeep, and we going down the road, and Betty Dobson is screaming, "You have lost your mind, get out of that Jeep." And Paul stopped the Jeep, and he told me and Abraham, he says, "Most of us will be dead in 2 weeks. You have to go back so somebody will tell the world what's going on." Because there was a blackout. The announcement of the Rwanda genocide was done by me and Abraham Mahosi and Reverend Clemson Brown at Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon. That's when America first heard. And then we went to the OAU and says, "Why aren't you saying anything?" And they wouldn't. And Dr. Jeffrey's little gang called the Sons of Africa put a picket line around the OAU down by the UN and forced them to go to Paris and make that announcement. But that's not quite why I'm telling the story. Paul Kagame backed a man who was a good friend also of Alambe Brath called Laurent Kabila. Laurent Kabila, with the help of Paul Kagame, overthrew Mobutu, the murderer of Patrice Lumumba, and drove him and his family out of the country. They don't tell you that it was the same Paul Kabila who put his army and his money behind, Paul Kagame, who put his power behind Kabila. Now, the man who's current the president of the Congo, who brought in the Romanian mercenaries and other Eastern European mercenaries to fight against M23, is the son of the man who helped to kill Patrice Lumumba. History will erase the mystery. His father was 3 times prime minister under Mobutu. His father was originally with Lumumba. He was one of the first with a little group that broke away from Lumumba and sided with the Americans. That led to Lumumba's death. It is now known in history that Dwight David Eisenhower gave the word to kill Lumumba, and was the one who started the CIA, him and his brother. But he went over, the CIA went over and oversaw the murder that was carried out by the French and the Belgians and the British physically. And Mobutu was the one to help capture and turn him over to them. All of them working for the same forces that's working in the same Congolese government today to destroy the people in the southeast region, because that region that they're talking about is not Congo. That is Rwanda, Tutsi land, that was taken away after the Berlin Conference because of its wealth, and made an addendum to the Congo because of Belgians' control of the Congo. Before the Berlin Conference was called the Berlin Conference, it was called the Conference on the Congo. That is the official name of it, the Conference on the Congo. We call it the Berlin Conference because it happened in Berlin, but it's called the Conference on the Congo. So they took that part of Rwanda and cut it off geographically and made it Congo. And until this day, the Tutsi people who've been living there for thousands of years were never treated as Congolese by Mobutu's government, nor the present government. And that's why Paul Kagame is telling them, this is not a war just about minerals. This is an ethnic war, and until you acknowledge that, you'll never find any peace here. And those men in M23, those are Tutsi people not from modern-day Rwanda, but Tutsi people from Goma and Lviv and the other people who've been there for thousands of years, fighting for their own ethnic integrity. It happens that they own the richest piece of land in the Congo. Now, America and Trump, and this is where he comes in, he's over there, his people, trying to negotiate with this traitorous president to give them the mineral rights to a certain part of Congo, and then he will send the American army in to fight the M23. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? History erases mystery, you know. It lets you see clearly what's going on. And their media, even the one called liberal media, when it comes to us, there's nothing liberal about them in terms of telling an African truth. So we need to, in black history and understanding black history, is to understand current history. Because once, if they're able, and I don't think they will defeat the brothers in the M23, because those men are fighting for a lot more than a piece of diamond or gold, and the women who are fighting beside them. But if they are able to silence them, they're going to the Sahel. And they're going to go after Brother Ibrahim in Burkina Faso. And they're going to go after the brother in Mali. And they're going to go after, they're already trying to unseat the brother in Senegal. And they're going to go after the brother in Niger. And we, the third most populous African nation in the world, need to be aware enough not to let that happen. Ibrahim in Burkina Faso, who sees himself as the spirit of Thomas Sankara. When Sankara came to America, Leonard Jeffries hosted him for lunch at City College because the president of the college didn't have the integrity to greet him because he was a radical African president. How you not greet a president of a nation that comes to your campus? You know. And that same Sankara, all of the things this young man is now doing, spoke to us about things he wanted to do. So we, our black history, need to be strong. The last piece is the boycott tomorrow. Now, I'm not into boycotts, but I'm going to support this one because they're not really calling it a boycott. We're calling it like kind of a blackout. We just ain't shopping there. But that can't be the end game. The end game must be that money must go into black businesses to promote, support, and build black businesses. And that should be our trend. Because no matter what we do, go back to the bus boycott. We should have bought the bus company and owned it or created our own, and we didn't do it. Let's not make the same mistake now. If they can open a building and call it Targets, we can open the black Targets. It's the same money. Last year we spent $1.7 trillion. That means we're making $1.7 trillion. That's the legal money we're making. And we know we're making some illegal billions, but counting the legal money, $1.7 trillion. By 2030, that should cross about $2 trillion in terms of spending capital that's in the hands of black people. The weak part of that is that it's only turning over in our hands once. And that's because we're not building enough businesses fast enough. Now, our business building in the black community for 10 years have been on the incline, not the decline. It's just that it needs to be more of an incline as it's going up. But we can't tell these big corporations, we're going to penalize you if you don't institute DEA. But it's called DEI. And if you do, we're going to give you back our money. We can't do that again. This should give us an opportunity to see what financial powers we have in our hands and do what Dr. Claude Anderson said, aggregate that power by bringing it together and investing in buying property, buying businesses, training our youth with apprentice programs and others to run these businesses. That's the only freedom you're really going to ever have. As long as you're the consumer, but anybody else, you are never going to be free. So we need to think seriously on that. And then I'll end with the DEA thing. Never service us. You know who is the bottom of the DEA service ladder? We are. White women, 70% of the opportunities on all level corporate promotions and others go to white females. On the next level is white males. On the next level is Asians. On the next level is white Latinos. And on the bottom level is African Americans. Yet they try to make it appear that we are the ones that's profiting from this, and that's why the backlash. Now, you know why they've gotten quiet about it in the last week? Because they realized they were taking the money from their people. So they went on a hush-hush. You don't hear nothing about DEA heavy right now? Because they women said, what is wrong with y'all? But we better be aware. If you do the affirmative action stats, you're going to find the same thing going back to the 1960s. The pretense that we have profited. We have not gained no more than 1% to 3% more opportunity than we did before affirmative action or DEI on our own merits, because not only do we have to gain on our own merits, even when we go DEI, we have to be twice as good as them just to get the lower level corporate jobs. All of the statistics is down on paper. You can study it for yourself. So don't get played out of pocket, but we're the spokesman. We up there fighting, and then we standing on front, we on the TV, yada, 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 DEI, yada. And they're the ones always at the front of the line, and they never fight for anything. I haven't seen the Asians leading anything. You know? I certainly haven't seen the white woman or the white man leading anything to do with affirmative action, DEA, yet they're the three groups profiting most from it. So let's just be real to ourselves if we want to truly understand what black history is about. Black history is about the opportunity to be who God made you to be. And I didn't even go messing with the scripture tonight, did I, Reverend Derek? But let me say something about the scripture, because me and Derek, we always fighting. And then, Brother Derek, that'll be at the end. There was nobody you will ever meet who's more brutal on the black church than me. I stumped the church so bad, I had to look down in the ground and see which hole I put it in. Now, some of y'all going to feel upset because y'all think y'all got this great allegiance to the black church, and most who have the great allegiance know nothing about it or its history. I do. The little degree I do have is in theology, but I didn't need that degree. I've been studying theology all of my life. But I had to learn something about the black church that ain't about Christianity. It's about opportunity. When they took away everything we had African as sanctuary, the only place we could find sanctuary is under the tent of the Christian church. Not because the Christians allowed us the sanctuary, but that's the only place they felt we could be safely monitored. But that didn't work. Because in that black church, we took everything African we had and we hid it there and practiced it as much as we could there. Because the black church itself emanates out of Africa. The white church emanates out of Africa. But you can't just say that. You need to understand that, because you need to understand what of Africa did it bring with it, and what of whiteness did it add to it that we have to discard if we're going to return to the Church of Christ. Because the church that we're seeing in most of the places is not the Church of Christ. Otherwise, even our behavior as a people wouldn't be what it is. So it's worth giving deep study. I was hearing the particular scriptures you read tonight, very informative scriptures on the activism of the Christ, you know, and what he does for the community and for poverty and for people who are downtrodden. He wasn't just somebody coming out being a preacher. Matter of fact, they didn't even use the word preacher back in those days. They didn't even use the word priest back in those days. I think the best thing to call him is a scientist of God. Right? He understood, and the Bible says it multiple times, if you want to find God, you better look in the mirror. You better go within. Stop looking up in the sky. The sun is a good symbol for what God's essence is like, because without that light in the sky, we die, and without the light of God, we certainly die. But let's understand the metaphors. Let's understand the folklore, right? Let's understand the parables. If we're going to do the thing, let's master the thing. Africa is in the church. I grew up in that church. My grandfather was a minister, St. Anne's Baptist Church. And the first church in America that we started was not the AME church, which was a beautiful thing when we did that down in Philly. but it was the African Baptist Church in the woods of South Carolina and Georgia in 1749. And those churches, you go down south now, and that's my home place. You still see the African Baptist Church. They still call themselves that. We never stopped calling ourselves African. We were the African Baptist Church. And to my Prince Hall brothers, we were what? The African Free Lodge. A mother lodge in Boston is still called what? The African Free Lodge. We never forgot who we were. You know? In 1892, a group of women from Rochester, working with a man named T. Thomas Fortune, long before Malcolm X founded the Afro-American League. Do you know what the Afro-American League is called today? The NAACP. Started as the Afro-American League, it became the Niagara Movement, all the same people, and then it became the NAACP. History erases the mystery, it shows you the connections. And the same way with the church. This church could take you back to Africa faster than any other institution you know, but you got to study Africa so you can recognize what you see, because it's all there. And I'll tell you what opened the door for me, and that'll be my last statement for real. Tell the Lord the truth. I'm in Ghana, and I want to buy my first drum many years ago with Dr. Jeffries and them. So I went with the man to the place where you buy drums. Now, I didn't know nothing about playing the drums. It was a little self-taught stuff. But what I knew was the rhythm and the stomping in the church, you know. Boom, 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 because I lived in the woods, and when they clapped and stomped in the church, you heard it reverberate through all the trees. You just heard it everywhere. So I remember that. It's still in my head. And so I'm playing this on the drums. It was Friday, so it was Juma, so all the men had gone to mosque. But now everybody's rushing towards me. They got sticks, they got bricks, and I'm running to the brother who's with me, and he's explaining to them in Tree, I wasn't stealing the drum. I wasn't doing any harm. But they didn't come because they thought I was stealing the drum. The rhythm that I was playing that I heard in the church in South Carolina was an Akan call of distress. That's when my mind came open. That our ancestors remembered those things and put it in the claps and put it in the dance we call shout and put it in the stumps and put it in the rhythm of the song. They hid the African in the church. When you go to the Amonan bench in a church, that's an African thing. When you gather the children at 13 in that year to prepare them for the year for the Amonan bench, that's the age grade thing. That's an African thing. Jomo Kenyatta talk about it in Facing Mount Kenya. We hid Africa in the church, especially the Baptist church and Sister Jeffries' church, those Pentecostals. Because they woke up and they looked and said, no, the way they were doing this thing in Europe, this is not right. But you couldn't call it black, because they would come after us. But every black Wall Street, about 50 of them, the one in Oklahoma wasn't the only one, was built by the church. Every black business, the cab companies, the bus companies and the stores was built with the church at the leadership. But guess who was the core behind that church and in that church? It was the Prince Hall Masons. So now if you get those two things back together and redirect how we spend our money, then Black history would be the most joyous moment of our life every day. Thank you, Brother Minister. Thank this congregation. Congratulations again.